If you have read any headline about ride safety in the last few years, you have probably heard that amusement rides in the US are self-regulated. Usually this is said in a negative way in an attempt to make the industry look bad or like it needs some sweeping laws to put owners and operators in place. But what does this really mean? Are owners of each park really able to just do whatever they think is best for safety and fill in the gaps with what feels good? Well, unsurprisingly no. There's a lot that goes into the regulation of amusement rides in the US, and this varies heavily from state to state. In general though, a majority of US states have adopted some or all of the ASTM F24 committee standards for amusement rides and devices. Even in the few states that have not adopted these standards, it is still in an operator's best interest to be in compliance, as if an accident does happen, they will at least be able to defend themselves by showing that they have complied with the standard. So what are these standards and how are they written? The ASTM F24 committee standards set a baseline for the safe operation, maintenance, manufacturing, and inspection of an amusement ride. These standards are not inherently required by law, though as mentioned, many states and even other countries have adopted them as such. There are over 25 different standards for different areas of the amusement park industry, and each covers a specific area. Within them, there are a few core standards that make up the backbone of other standards and are some of the most commonly applied. These are F770, Standard Practice for Ownership, Operation, Maintenance, and Inspection of Amusement Rides and Devices, F2291, Standard Practice for Design of Amusement Rides and Devices, and F1193, Standard Practice for Quality Manufacture and Construction of Amusement Rides and Devices. I've already made a video covering some of the requirements found in F2291 if you'd like to learn more about that standard. In this video, we'll be discussing how these standards are set as well as some of the basics found in F770, Standard Practice for Ownership, Operation, Maintenance, and Inspection of Amusement Rides and Devices. These standards are not made by some governing body that has never worked on an amusement ride before. Instead, they are set by those that work in the industry, work in fields around the industry, or who are just interested in the industry. The ASTM F24 committee writes these standards and does so by gathering up all of these groups and discussing them. They do this by holding 2 meetings a year, one in February and one in October. Both are free for any member of the public or industry to join and provide their input. In fact, the only restrictions on who can provide input is that ride manufacturers and suppliers are limited to no more than 50% of representation, as they may be biased to approve standards that benefit their interests. That being said, they still have a seat at the table, along with owners, operators, maintenance, and anyone else interested in the advancement of safety in this industry. These individuals can provide input on changes to the standards, as well as to the introduction of new standards. All changes must have unanimous approval in order to be approved. All standards must be renewed with or without changes every 5 years. This is how these standards have been developed, and accordingly, the ASTM standards are some of the most comprehensive in the world. While this video is focused on ASTM, it should be noted that Europe's EN standards for amusement ride design are very similar in content, and there is a significant effort to bring both ASTM and EN into harmony, meaning that they mirror each other's requirements. Other areas of the world have standards like GB in China and ISO in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, which are both considered to be inferior to the ASTM and EN standards with regards to amusement rides and devices, mostly due to lack of upkeep. ASTM F770 is required by law to be followed in some capacity in the states shown on this map. This standard sets the baseline for safe practice when working with amusement rides. We will be covering the basics of this standard, but if you're interested, I encourage you to read the entire standard yourself to learn more. First, the standard requires owners/operators to write an operating document. This should be the primary document from which operators of the ride are trained. This document should include the following: a basic description of what the ride is and how it works, details about the positions operators will be working at the ride, general safety procedures, emergency procedures, recommendations on the ride's operation from the manufacturer, any additional recommendations on the ride's operation from the owner, and a detailed evacuation plan that must cover things such as the preferred load and unload location, the process of evacuating a stalled ride unit from all possible locations, the location of needed equipment, and much more. The standard also includes guidelines for signage, specifically that ride safety signage should be bold and concise and include safety information about the ride such as height requirements, health restrictions, and rider responsibility. Additionally, the standard states that these signs should be present at all entrances to the ride, meaning that if a park uses their exit as an entrance, say for accessibility loading, they must have a sign there as well. The standard sets some baseline requirements for inspections as well, including that operations or maintenance personnel, or some combination of the two, must inspect the following daily: all ride units, so trains on a roller coaster, entrances, ramps, load and unload areas, communication devices, safety devices, brakes, the ride structure, signage, and fencing around the ride. With regards to fencing, all ride area fences must be at least 42 inches tall and have sufficient spacing so that a 4-inch diameter round object could not fit through it. Of course, taller and more restrictive fences are allowed. This is just the baseline minimum. The standard has a few more sections, such as outlining the basics of a training program that must be documented, and to use a system where a trainer demonstrates a task, then observes the trainee completing that task. It also requires that the owner source parts from the ride manufacturer or OEM, or that the parts be made with drawings from the OEM, or that the replacement parts come from a third-party engineer. The standard also requires that when a downtime occurs for mechanical, environmental, electrical, or operational reasons, the affected ride units or ride unit shall be cycled at least one time without riders prior to reopening. This is one time per the unit affected. So on a roller coaster with 3 trains, if an issue occurs that only affects one train, that train must be cycled a minimum of one time. But if an issue occurs that affects all of the trains, then each unit must cycle once for a total of 3 ride cycles prior to loading riders. And of course, this is at a minimum. And that just about wraps up the basics of ASTM and the standard F770. This is one of the most basic standards in the amusement industry, and accordingly it's not the most detailed, but it does serve as a baseline for owners and operators to keep riders safe. As mentioned, anyone can contribute to the development of these standards. The fact that you have made it this far into this video means that you would probably have something to add. I have provided links to how you can get involved with ASTM to help set the standards for the future of the amusement industry below. If you're interested in becoming an ASTM member, you can access these standards yourself, as well as support their development. They also do have discounted rates for students. You can also learn more about all of this in the description. If you're watching this video and have participated in an F24 committee meeting, let me and others know your experience in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.